Okay, so we're about to jump into Debian installer from the netinstaller ISO that you pull off the homepage. So what are some of the things you're going to need? If you're going to do this on real hardware, depending on the computer you have, you might need an Ethernet adapter. This is the Amazon Basics one. It's nice aluminum USB 3 gigabit on this end. I think it was like 20 bucks or something. Highly worth having if you have a laptop that does not have an Ethernet jack. This thing has saved my butt so many times. And doing a Debian install from the net installer, it's a good tool to have. Another thing you're going to need is a thumb drive. And they don't have to be a fancy thumb drive. This little tiny sucker right here, I think I bought this one off at AliExpress for $2. It's a 4 gigabyte USB 2.0 thumb drive. More than enough room for, especially for a net install. You can do a live install on most ISOs with this. Would not recommend for Windows 10 because I think Windows 10 requires 5 gigs. It's a beefy boy. Other things you might need an Ethernet cable. I'll have links to suitable devices that you can grab down below. Links, they're affiliate links, but they're links and they work and they don't cost you anything, but they give me a little kickback, which I need. Speaking of needing money and being destitute, I'm a little less destitute thanks to these two cool cats right here, Simon Moss, Jay Stoll. Without their Patreon support, I probably would not have the inspiration to make an hour-long Debian installing video. So if you'd like to help out and support what I'm doing, that's one way you can support me. I'll also have a link down below for my LibrePay if you want to avoid the Patreon mess. But also, it helps me if you do something simple like thumbs up the video or subscribe if you want to see more of this weirdness that is the Arthur brain. Subscribe. Yeah. So let's install some Debian. Okay. Now that you have all the pieces you need to install Debian on your hardware, this is where I normally would connect up my video capture device to whatever piece of hardware I have so you can see what I'm doing. However, I currently don't have a traditional desktop computer at hand. I have a few dozen laptops laying around. Okay, maybe not a dozen, but I have more than I probably should laptops laying around. But the thing about them is if you connect up a display port, most of them won't send video to that display port unless either the screen is disabled or after you've booted up into an environment. So I can't really show through a screen capture the installation process. I can, however, go into a virtual machine. So there are some things you got to understand about the virtual machine route versus the real hardware route. Obviously, in some ways, the virtual machine will be friendlier than the physical hardware. In other ways, it may not be as smooth. I've done this on enough pieces of hardware to know really the biggest failing on real hardware versus this virtual machine is the Wi-Fi chipset, especially with Debian, because the only Wi-Fi that's supported are the chipsets that are open source GPL chipsets that are in the kernel, which is not, it's not zero, but it's not, it's a few. I recommend, and this is a good way to look at it, getting the old Raspberry Pi USB dongle, because that one had the chipset that worked great on Debian, because it was for the Raspberry Pi. The idea was going to be as open as can be. I've used that one several times. It works flawlessly. If you're doing this on a Dell, an older Dell, like a 2013 X230 or something, there's a pretty good chance it just might see it. No guarantee. Depends on the chipset. If not, you could always go Ethernet cable if you are in a situation where that's plausible. A tiny little hack that you can do, if you have an Android phone, you hook up the Android phone to the USB port, you can activate the tethering over USB while you are on your Wi-Fi on the phone, and then it kind of acts as a bridge between the two devices, and that's kernel supported. So USB tethering will show up even on the Debian installer. Again, on that one, the other end of that puzzle is I have a buddy of mine who got his phone from T-Mobile, and they somehow had disconnected the USB tethering functions. He still had Wi-Fi tethering functions. Don't know what that's all about, but the USB one was hobbled. Okay, so now it's time to get in the meat and potatoes. So in standing of real hardware, I will be using Gnome boxes. That's kind of my go-to. Yeah, spin this thing up real quick. Desktop mode. As you can see here, I have a Windows 10 that I sometimes use for work. It's brand new. I haven't really used it much. I installed it like a week ago. And then we have the Debian 10 install that I did as a test for this one. And I guess it couldn't hurt to show you what we're getting into here. Let's log that in. Wonder if I used a password that I'm going to remember for this one. I usually use the same desktop password because I figure real life. Well, maybe. Wow. We're going to get one of these passwords. You know what? It doesn't matter because this machine's dead to me. So let's go here. Force shutdown. What's the worst that could happen? Let's build a brand new virtual machine. Okay. Ideally, of course, in the real world, you would have had to flash your ISO onto a thumb drive. But this one, we're just going to select the ISO from the downloads folder. Debian 1080. Okay. Now, Express install is cool, don't get me wrong, but we're not going to be using an Express install. We're going to use a traditional install because I want you to see how simple this is. Having said that, use Express install when you use Gnome boxes. It is fantastic. They even have the Express install for Windows 10, and it makes everything so much easier. But we're talking about real hardware here. We're pretending this is legitimate hardware, so we're going to go for it. Going to allocate 1 gig of memory. I have 16 gigs in this machine, so I'm going to bring this up to a very usable 4 gigs. 4 gigs is fine as long as you're not doing crazy multimedia stuff. The disk space should be fine. Again, you'll be limited by the physical hardware of your device. If you're going to run the Gnome desktop, I recommend at least 4 gigs of RAM. But you can run it on 2. But at 2, Mate desktop or LXDE or W3, i3 or whatever, those tiling managers, a lot of those are very lightweight. I'm a Gnome fan, so I'm going to be using Gnome. I just realized it clicked it. It said 1 gig, didn't it? Yeah. All right. So there's 2 ones. There's the graphical install and the regular install. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with the graphical install, but it's exactly the same as the text install. Like the menus are laid out exactly the same. And I usually go with the text install simply because the graphical install has sometimes weird reactions to my touchpads on laptops. And I think most people are going to be doing this on a laptop. I think in 2021, laptops are probably sometimes the easiest piece of hardware you can get in terms of a full computer. United States, American English. I almost speak American English. Almost. Not quite. It's terrible American English, but it's American English. So this is the part where it's going to load additional components. It's going to look at if it needs networking, if it needs modules. And then I think at this point, it goes right into network discovery. And because we have the virtual machine handling all of it, it's going to be fine. Auto configuration. So this is exactly where it would be if like you hook up your Ethernet and it's good. If you have a wireless device, it'll actually, if it's able to detect it, it's a kernel supported one, it'll actually prompt you for the SSID. Well, actually, I think it gives you a list of the SSID to connect to and password, just like any other system. It just looks command line E when it does it. Host name, fake. That's a good host name. Domain name, that's something else. If you, I actually don't know what that does. I think that might be more for servers. I always leave that blank. Okay, so there's a lot of writing on here. I recommend you reading this, but I'll say the part you should take away from this is if you enter a root password by default and you don't build like a desktop environment, you will only have root installed in Debian. If you skip putting in a root password, then you'll be prompted to do a username and password. And at that point, you'll have a user, even if you don't have a desktop. If you do have a desktop, either way, your user will not have sudo privileges if you install a root password. If you skip the root password, the desktop user can sudo to do things. That's, some would argue one is safer than the other. Yeah, I think if you're starting out, go ahead and skip this and give yourself the sudo password. Full name, that's me, Arthur. Username, Art. I like to keep it simple. I don't want to type too many letters. Password. Let me do that one. For my test passwords is always hello, because it's simple. And when you're doing a non-important install, it doesn't matter what the password is. When you do your install, make sure it's a easy to remember, finger-friendly password, because you have to type it every time you log in and every time you run sudo or su or any of those. I'm in the Pacific. I am 30 miles south of Los Angeles, a little sleepy town called Long Beach. And so Pacific time, guided. Okay, so here's some cool stuff. This is where we get some of the cooler stuff. You can go the guided route. You can use the entire disk, which is what I usually do. Entire disk and set up LVM. That's some kind of virtual thing. I can't remember. I know the bottom one is encryption. I used to encrypt my whole hard drive. Actually, this machine I'm talking on has the encrypted hard drive, but a lot of people point out if you encrypt your home folder, it's actually just as safe, but you can also restore your system if things go wrong. As long as you have the password, you can get back in usually into it. You can also go manual. I'm just take a peek at manual. That's just like guarded partitioning, configuring virtual disk. When you're just starting out, I say go back, detect disks, do the automatic formatting. When you're just starting out, guided partition, use the entire disk. That's what I recommend. It's easier, it's better. After you get a little more comfortable with Debian and playing it from scratch, well, not from scratch, but installing it natively, go a little crazier. But for starting out, we're just gonna do that. Virtual drive. Okay, this is a cool one. This is really simple. You can actually separate your home partition. And that's cool if you want to change distributions. You can have your documents and your files all in this one section. And when you reinstall a different operating system, all you change is the root folder and you don't touch the home folder. So all your files stay. Is it super safe? No, it's not. Is it convenient? It can be very convenient. I usually do this unless the hard drive is too small. This is a 2.1 gigabyte hard drive. So at that size, anything under 128, I usually do all one just because partitioning is weird. But if you have a nice big drive, then it's not a bad way to go. Finish partitioning and write changes to disk. This is your last chance to go back and fix something. If you have flubbed it up, you can fix from here, but we're going for it. We're hitting it. The double asks you one more time. There we go. And yeah, partitioning. Now, depending on your system, it might have a thing going on where it's writing zeros to disks, and it'll say like, hey, we're writing zeros to disk. You can hit enter to skip this, and you can let it go, but sometimes you can wait there for like an hour. Unless you're very paranoid, you don't really need it. It's gonna be fine just doing the fast format, and then it jumps you to this screen. But I didn't do it on this one because I think this hard drive showed up as unformatted, so I think you can avoid that if you format the drive before you start The installation. Yes. Some of this stuff is just like sitting around and waiting for the computer to think. Yep. Looks like we're coming close to the end of this phase, anyways. Aha. So traditionally, what you'd do to install is you'd have a stack of disks, and you can install lots of things offline this way. We're connected to the internet. If you want to go the disk route, that's a good way to do it offline. I live in the city, so the internet's pretty ubiquitous. If you don't live in the city, it might be worthwhile to grab all the ISOs off the internet and maybe burn them or mount them onto a partition or something. But I'm good. Do you want to, just gonna no. All right, this is where we configure our package manager. So something that's kind of taken for granted in the modern age is a lot of these aren't running on a traditional CDN. What they do is they have these different people in different parts of the world who volunteer to host the packages and keys for Debian. I live in the United States. It's usually a good rule of thumb to grab a server that's nearest to you. However, if you're worried about your local government being kind of sketchy, it might be worthwhile to look at another country. I'm lucky enough that I'm fairly certain the United States repositories are not suspect. But the default, of course, is deb.debian.org. I'm going to go grab one of these other ones. They don't have a tool to figure out the speed, like some servers are a little bit faster than others. But I used to always go... I'm not seeing it here. Well, I mean, you could choose different ones. Here you go, Wikimedia. That's a good one. Those guys are legit. Proxy tools, if you're running proxy. I am not running a proxy. It's going to scan the mirror and update your repo database. We're getting closer. It's not a crazy long process. Not. In fact, I might even show you some basic setup stuff to make things look a little bit more. Well, the default layout is not exactly a modern layout. I mean, it's nice, but we're running Debian stable here, so it's going to be a little dated aesthetic, and we're going to do something about that. So now it's pulling all the files off the web. Participate in the package survey. So this is anonymous data that's pulled from you. If you're paranoid, do not jump on it because they are pulling data from you. I like to support, and I'm not too worried about what they're going to do. I trust the Debian team, hence why I'm running their operating system. Task cell. Okay, so on platforms like Ubuntu, you often are presented with, do I install regular Ubuntu, Xubuntu, Lbuntu, Xubuntu? I don't know the other Ubuntus, but Debian, it's all one happy family. And so what you do is you simply select the desktop environment that you want installed. And you can have multiple installed. You can have one installed. And you can also disable and have a headless system. Totally allowed. And if you're running a server environment, it's actually preferred. But again, I'm doing this the way I usually do to set up my machine. Usually grab that one. Usually turn off print server. And I add SSH server. It gives me all the tools I need for SSHing. And there we go. And because I skipped having a root password, again, I will have sudo capabilities in my system, which is, again, some say it's less secure, but I find it to be very convenient. And sometimes you have to choose that convenience over secure, but sometimes you should be really, really secure. And maybe that's the time when you switch to having sudo being disabled. I don't know. You should probably listen to a security expert instead of some schmuck on the internet who makes funny little videos. But yeah. I'm sitting here watching this thing slowly move by with its 6 minutes. And even though I do have what I consider adequate internet in this part of the world, 7:36 on a weeknight, everyone in my neighborhood is at home trying to watch Netflix or Disney Plus or Hulu or Amazon Prime or the other plethora of online streaming services. And because of that, the bandwidth usually dives down pretty slow at this hour. Ideally, I should have done this in the middle of the day, but sadly, my day job is my priority then, which not ideal, but it keeps the lights on, and that's important. If you live in a part of the world where the internet's kind of slow, this is not a terrible point in the process to maybe get up, make yourself some tea or a sandwich or something like that. Maybe pet your cat. Tell family members that you live with that you adore them. It takes a minute, and if you have fast internet, it's usually. If I did this during the day, it'd probably have been about 45 seconds tops. But because I'm doing this in the evening on Thursday night, and I think my girlfriend's streaming something in the other room also, using the Chromecast, which kind of, well, that's a whole nother animal. That's a whole nother topic for another day. Um, but yes, this is taking a bit longer, and that's okay. If you walk away and you come back and the screen's dark, that just means the laptop went to sleep. I think it's just a little tap on the keyboard will wake it back up just like on a regular system. Even though this is just running a command line interface and there's no Xorg or anything, I mean, you're running, I think, a pretty complete version of the kernel already at this point, just in RAM. So a good portion of your device will operate as expected. Yeah. Looks like we are down to the last 30 seconds. Let's see how long we can stretch out this video to maximize my ad revenue. Because I'm playing that game now. That I am. Keeps messing with me. It dropped down to 15 seconds like 4 times in a row. Oh, 3, 2. Is it actually? Ah! I'm glad you're here to join me for that adventure. Installation failed. Installate. You know what this means? This means we get to do it again. An installation step failed. You can try running the failing item again from the menu or skip and choose something else. So on the good side, this means I get to go over what to do when things go south. On the downside, I have to spend more time recording this video instead of hanging out with my girlfriend. Trade-offs. Trade-offs. Let's try to fix this sucker. The nice thing is, let me select the window here. It brings you back to the Debian installer menu, which is great because you can always go back to any point in the process and start over. In fact, you can even go all the way back to, let's see, load installer components. Oh, detect network hardware. There you go. So if you you start the thing and like, oh no, I need to plug in my Ethernet, and you can go back to detect network hardware. It'll detect network and it picks up right there. And anything that's already done, it's already set up. So you just kind of enter. So I think what happened is I'm going to go back to install the base. Yeah, let's go back to install the base system. I think the repository I picked might be the problem. Proceed with an unclean target. Yes, that's fine. It's fine. Oh, maybe it's not fine. All right, go back. Install the base system. No. Can we format this? Go back. All right. Let's go back to detect disks. We're going to format the sucker. Maybe I will get to show you what happens if the drive's not already formatted. Detecting hardware. The funny thing is when I done the practice run, everything went without a hitch. It was flawless. Targets no. And cancel. Should go back and erase the format. I'm trying to go back and erase the format. Let's see. Partition disks. Uh-huh. Let's try this again. Guided partition. Use the entire disk. All files on one disk. Finish partitioning the drive. Oh yeah, we're doing that. Write the changes to disks. Installing the base system. All right, round 2. I just had to keep going back and hitting a different spot until it was happy with what I was doing. So I guess the one of the key points here is there's a little bit of trial and error in this process. Sometimes it'll be smooth, sometimes it won't, but don't give up. Or do. It's completely up to you. All right. Base system looks like it's almost back to normal. Linux kernel 4.19. Again, Debian stable. Rock solid once you got it running. But a little dated. That's a trade-off that I think it's worth it sometimes. For the longest time, for quite a while, I actually ran Debian stable. In the last year, I think since like lockdown started, I started going to unstable, just because of how good unstable has gotten. I've had friends who've been running unstable for years, and they've claimed not to have problems. But in the past, I've had problems with unstable. But this last year, it's been pretty slick. My host environment is the unstable. Okay, select and install software. Participate in survey. Yep. Oh, look at that. Only the core system installed. I've never seen this before. I'm going for it. Let's see what happens. Maybe I'll have to run task cell after. Oh, wow. This is interesting. So the nice thing is, if you're in a pinch, you're in a pickle, you can always just install the base system. Don't quote me, but I think you might even be able to do that off the net disk without. Here we are. Install grub bootloader. Yes, we're going to install grub bootloader on the virtual device. So I guess we're going to have to run task cell on the thing if it did not get installed, which is not a terrible thing. It's just sudo task cell. Okay, here's the point where if you're on real hardware, you're going to yank out that thumb drive and hit the enter button. I think Gnome Boxes unhooks the thumb drive for me. Debian, is that my new one? I believe that's my new one. All right. Fake login. Oh, snap. Art's my password. Hello. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen just because the fonts are kind of small here. That might be a little hard to see. Okay. So, sudo. Uh-oh. There it goes. The virtual machine wasn't capturing my keyboard. Sudo apt update. Let's start with some updates. All right. We trust that you've received the usual lecture from the local system administrator. It usually boils down to these 3 things. 1. Respect the privacy of others. 2. Think before you type. And 3. The Spider-Man point. With great power comes great responsibility. All right, let's drop in that password. Oh, All right, so it shows that the CD-ROM drive is still a repository. real quick. Let's make sure we're on the internet. So I'm going to do a ping.art.bike. All right. We are connected to the internet. So there's several ways we can go about this one. This is where normally if you need to look it up, we'd use our phone because our computer is doing something else. But we're going to go ahead and open up our browser because we're going to look at some default repository URLs because I don't have them memorized. They're pretty easy. You could memorize these, but I'm not that smart. And I usually have the internet with me. So Debian repository. I think it's the wiki that has the default, or is it sources list? Yeah, it was sources list. You can see I've been here before. Sources list. They give examples of good sources. And the one I use, here we are. Contrib and non-free components. So I'm going to basically make sure this is in my source file. You're not going to be able to see this because I'm going to put this on the other screen. But I'm going to make this full screen again. And I'm going to go sudo nano. Wait, does it have a VI? Let's see. Do we have VI? We do have VI, so I don't have to use nano. I don't hate nano, but I prefer VI. Does it have Vim? No, just VI. Okay. So sudo VI, the oldest of the old, etc source. Oh, wait, apt sources. There we go. Aha! Here we are. That's the only file we have in our repository. And if you remember correctly, we want these mamma jammas right down here. I don't know if I can copy and paste into the virtual machine at this point. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. I'm going to bring that back over there. Back to the terminal. And I'm going to go boop. Delete that line. And nope, I cannot paste from the virtual into the virtual machine. No problem. We are going to do this the old-fashioned way. Actually, real quick. Set number. That's better. I don't know why. I need it. Input. I said input, sucker. That was weird. Deb. HTTP, not HTTPS. Deb.debian.org. I think the issue we had before was the repository we chose that we picked. Deb is what the kind of repository is. A Deb repository at http, not s, deb.debian.org/debian, and the version buster and the repo folder main. The next one, we can do a deb src. Now, deb src is if you need to compile a program, you can sometimes grab the deb src version, which will load in all the libraries and dependencies you need to compile a program. So say if you wanted a newer version of OBS than was available in Debian stable, you could do the grab, I forgot the exact command, but you grab all the dependencies using the deb source, and then you can build it out from there. Deb.debian.org/Debian buster main. I could have just copied that. So this one is going to be HTTP. This is the security. Yes. Debian.org/Debian security. Security. That is not spelled right. Security. Yeah, that's better. /buster main. I forgot to add contrib non-free. This is a controversial point. I stand by it. There are some excellent contributions that are not in the main repository. They're left out possibly because of patent, possibly because of just not aligned with Debian's main goals. And non-free is kind of basically if you need wireless drivers and it's not supported in the kernel. That's really what it comes down. That's like 99% of it. I think the hardware encoding for FFmpeg on an Intel chipset is in there also, but I do install that. Maybe that's bad. I don't know. It's debatable. It's debatable. You know, I'm gonna do myself a solid because I'm gonna not do the sources for now. If you're doing the main system, obviously you get the sources in there, but Deb. So we have the main security. Oh, the security has a contrib non-free also. Boop. Contrib non-free. And last but not least, the bus updates. So http not s deb.debian.org/Debian updates. Oh no, it's space buster dash updates main contrib non-free. I see a typo. Contrib. Something's happening here. I don't know what's going on. Something's not jiving for me here. VI is a bit of a punk sometimes. Trib input B space. Yeah, I got my insert here. You know what? I'm not even gonna fight it. I'm gonna cheat. Are you ready for this? Get up to the point where I know it works good. Go ahead and yank that. Paste that. Insert. Main non-free. I'm not even gonna question it. I'm just gonna done. Hopefully there's no typos. That was a lot of work for very little payoff. And I just broke it. There we go. Woo! Sudo apt update. Hey. That's looking pretty slick. This is a 35-minute video according to my timestamp. Oh. Must release not have a release file. Is there a typo there? There's probably a typo there. Let's see. Debian. Buster updates. Huh. Oh, I see. Buster. I'm mistyping things for some reason tonight. Let's see what I'm typing right here. Now look at my notes here. Debs security buster updates. That looks right. Let's try that again. Give me a second as I figure this out. Okay, so it was basically me making massive typos. You probably were looking at the screen and screaming, as is your right. So we did a sudo apt update. All right, sudo apt upgrade. Let's grab all those packages that we're missing, and now we can start doing sudo taskcell. Task cell. Whew. All right. Aha! We are back to a very Familiar screen. Desktop. We want Gnome. We want SSH server. We want that. We're on a laptop. Well, not really, but in your scenario, we're on a laptop. Was that option there before? I don't know. But this will do all the heavy lifting and configuring of major packages. So this kind of works like a script around apt because it does installing the sets of packages, but also does like some basic configuration. So I mean, at this point, we're technically the operating system's installed. This is just getting a desktop picked out and set up and running the way we want it to run. It's both, I guess, a blessing and a curse that this all the mistakes that happened. I'm keeping most of these in here because I think all of these are very teachable things that will help you when you are fighting your way through Debian. Having said that, there is, I know we'll link it down below, there is a Debian live installer disk if you want to go that route. I'm not too proud to use it. I use it once in a while on fickle machines. It installs just like any other Linux distribution. You boot into a live environment. You have the full GNOME desktop, and there's an icon on the desktop that says install. It's not officially supported ISO. It's a third-party supported ISO. It has non-free drivers in the ISO image. But for the longest time, I kept that on my thumb drive because it worked really good as a rescue disk also. Especially in the before times when we could go to someone's house safely and run a rescue. So there's that. Looks like we're getting close to the end. Hopefully, even though the bar is not all the way across, hopefully it won't give us a crazy error again. Still got to unpack the packages. Unpacking the packages is very important. Very important. This is for the first time the little fans on my laptop are spinning now. So I guess unzipping packages, that's what it takes to heat up an Intel. Not the screen recording. That hasn't really made the fan spin up, which is funny because that used to be very taxing. On my X230, screen recording took up like 30% of the resources. On this one, right now my total resources are at 20%. And I'm running a virtual machine, Firefox web browser, and I have the fancier compositing than I had before. All right, things are picking up. We're at 69%, 70%. This has been going on for a while. With the 40-minute mark, according to my OBS. Might be longer, it might be shorter on your end. But if you're still here, you're still here. You're a trooper. And just want to remind you, if you're still here and you want to keep supporting what I'm doing, I got 2 badasses already on the Patreon. These guys, rock solid. Cool cats. They're supporting me, and I appreciate that. But if you want to support me, you can. Because I like making this stuff, and if I could afford to put more time into this, man, that'd be pretty groovy. All right, I think we're almost to the point where we're going to be at the next stage. If everything goes according to plan, we'll be booting into a desktop environment. We can start cleaning things up a little bit, making things look a little bit more at home, which I'm a big fan of. Any second now. Alright, bro. And there it is. At first I thought it didn't go, but like there's a little tiny command prompt at the bottom there. Control L. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sudo power off. I'm going to shut the machine down. This is optional. I'm just doing this because I think when we boot up now, we should have a window manager that pops up for the login and everything. So we're going to try that. Pop that up. Open that up. So far, so good. Grub loaded. I guess grub loaded last time too. We have our nice... Whoa. I have a cursor. Is that native cursor? Oh, there we are. Haha, look at that. So we put in our password. Now, because this is a virtual machine, the resolution is by default stuck this way. It's just doing VESTA display. 9 times out of 10, if you have a laptop, it's going to recognize the resolution. But bear with me as I fix my display here real quick. I guess this is also a good tutorial of how to get a good setup on your virtual machine. But 1920 by 1080, that is the display size I have right now. Excellent. Keep changes. Awesome. All right. We are in a live environment. So again, looks a little dated. Not terrible. And some people are very happy jumping off right from here. But I think I need a few more packages here. So sudo apt install gnome tweak tool. There we are. So Gnome Tweak Tool has some cool things to it. It lets you change your theme, change some buttons, all that kind of stuff. But we need some themes. So sudo apt install arc theme and papyrus icon theme. Those two are in almost every repository, and they're a little bit more modern than the default. I personally like them a lot. And the nice thing is, now we got Gnome Tweak Tool. We can install the custom themes. Well, I'm sorry. We're installing themes. We can activate the themes on the Gnome desktop, and that should be pretty rad. Whew! Any second now. Oh, I almost forgot. App search extensions. Gnome extensions? No. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not. Ah, that's right. Let's get out of here for a second. Let's go to tweak tools. Appearance. This is where we want to be. Applications. Arc dark. Huh? It's better, right? Icons. Papyrus dark. Now we click out. Look at that nice flat icon set. Much more modern interface. Let's right click here, display settings. We can find background. Choose a nice background. Debian Gnome has some nice backgrounds. I think most of these are like the default Gnome backgrounds. I like the nice flat. Now that is a modern desktop. So a lot of people like to get the bar on the side here, and I'm going to show you that. And at that point, I think we're going to be pretty squared up. So we're going to launch Firefox. Oh, I keep saying but. I want you to take a peek at how Firefox looks up here with a thinner top. If you go into Customize, you're going to see the title bar. A lot of distros make Firefox look like that, which is, well, first off, it's a waste of space, especially in a GTK3/GTK4 environment. Get rid of that title bar, so much better. But I'm also going to shrink the density, compact, turn the theme dark theme everything. All right, so now, this is just me. You got to bear with me. I'm just that kind of guy. Change the search to DuckDuckGo. Yeah, that's more what I want. All right, so let's go Gnome extensions. Make this full screen. Oh wait, no, my face is in the way. Let's move it over here and move this over here. There we go. So Gnome extensions. This is where some customization comes in. First, we need to get the extension installed. Allowed in private mode. And then we refresh this sucker. Now the extension world is our oyster. -to-dock. A very popular one. The Ubuntu Gnome environment uses a fork of this. It's a very Gnome specific version of it. But we got the generic one over here. Doesn't look that much different. I mean, it's popped out here, but we can go -dock settings. I turn off IntelliHide, and we want to go panel mode. See, there you go. There you got that traditional shrink it dash, that kind of Ubuntu look to it. And there's a lot of other awesome plugins. Maybe I'll do a video in the future on the best ones to get. But there you go. You have a modern desktop running Debian stable on any device, and you can start experimenting, building, adding tools. You have all the basic things you need. Let's go into the applications real quick to show you what installs by default. You have your Firefox, you have Evolution on Mail client, which I don't use, but it's there. Gnome Calendar, which I do use, which is there. It's awesome. Files, obviously everyone knows the file manager. Very powerful, very, very useful. Let's go back into, Mahjong. Hours of fun killed there. We got the full LibreOffice suite. The Maps, underrated program. I've talked about Maps before. Maps is offline. Oh, that's weird. I think it's a virtual machine problem. But Maps is offline. That's funny. I think I need to activate something. But anyways, underrated program, very useful. I've made videos in the past. I'll probably make more in the future on Gnome Maps. I adore it. Gnome Tweak Tool, Transmission BitTorrent Client, Shotwell Image Photo Organizer, Simple Scan, Music, the music player, not bad. Rhythm Box, another music player. Gnome Weather might also not be working. Let's see. 90804, my zip code. Does that work? No. I think I need to type in my actual. There we go. Again, I think locations. I think there's some permissions things going on here in the setup, but again, dive into it, play with it. It's fantastic, and I guess that's gonna be it for now. Thank you for coming with me on this little install journey. It's been almost an hour, but I'm glad you made it this far. And again, I cannot recommend the love and adoration I have for my but hopefully sooner more Patreon subscribers. I also have links to LibrePay if you are more avoidance of the proprietary platforms and you still want to support me. That's an option too. Of course, links to everything and stuff like that is down below. And if you like what you got going on, if you like what I'm putting out here, feel free to subscribe. Feel free to like the video. All that kind of stuff helps out. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.